My name is Mark Florence. I'm the co-chairman of the Energy and Utilities Committee at BritCham. We today participated as BritCham in a think tank for a couple of hours at the Singapore International Energy Week, SIEW. And we covered 4 topics, the last of which is we're going to discuss now, which is the topic around finance and the risk revolution. And we have 2 speakers today, Ben Arnott, who is the Managing Director at the Société Générale, SOCGEN, as I know it, for financing, sustainable financing, energy financing. And we have Nick Dingemans, who is a partner at Penningtons Law. Perhaps I'll start with you, Ben, as you chaired the panel, and maybe it's not a mention who the panelists were, and then perhaps the key takeaways from the panel.
Certainly. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, it was a really very dynamic panel. We had myself and Nick co-chairing the session. We were joined by another legal professional, somebody who focuses on the finance side, a guy called Dominic Gregory, who's a partner with Brian Cave, Leighton and Paisner. We had Dr. Kahu Yu, who's a lead analyst, a lead energy analyst for Asia Pacific for Verest Maplecroft. And he's a real expert in energy policy and ESG risks in this region. And last but not least, we had a member of the UK's Connected Places Catapult called Alison Young. And she's a global export and investment specialist focusing on innovation. It's quite a diverse panel, and I think the discussions reflected that. I think I wanted to open up by trying to highlight some of the progress that have been made in the finance and investment community in the last few years. You know, responding to the Paris Agreement and the signals from previous COP meetings. And I think I was able to do that successfully because I queried the panelists on what their perception was of how things have evolved in their dealings with the finance and investment community in the last couple of years. And I think Dominic was quick to highlight, the growth in green and sustainability-linked loans and sustainability-linked bonds. I think Alison was quite forthright in as much as she highlighted the sort of collaboration that she experiences working with investors, not just at the kind of large corporate end of the spectrum, but also in the SME market, and the fact that that's an important area that needs to be supported by finance and investment. And maybe Nick, you'd like to comment on that kind of part of the discussion. What did you pick up on that side?
Yeah, I think Alison and I were both seeing similar things. Starting with the SMEs, there's a real drive into sustainability and especially in the startup and innovation world of products that are driven towards a sustainable goal, whether that's something that reduces carbon in the economy. So there's things like collapsible containers, which is a product that Mark and his team know about, and anything that's pulling carbon out of the air or changing the supply chain. So that's really interesting. And then through to the other end, where you're talking about multinational boards who are sitting down and going, yeah, we need to be ahead of this. We need to be net zero earlier than 2050, because we just don't know what's coming down the pipe in terms of regulation, in terms of how it will impact their balance sheet. So that those multinational boards are thinking about this in a way, and I've been privileged to sit in and advise some of those boards on those types of things in the last year or so. And it's this acceleration of thinking in the investment community and obviously in the finance community about this transition and needing to do it. ESG checklists are now a norm when you do an M&A deal. So,
and I think Kahu sort of highlighted the fact that he made that link between improve returns for finance institutions, for corporates, for SMEs that embrace that kind of strategy. And I think that was an important sort of linkage to make. And then moving on, we discussed really what drives behavior in the finance and investment community. Was it a carrot? Was it a stick? Was it hard and fast legal requirements? Was it sort of guidelines and regulations? Was it information sharing? Was it altruism on the part of the corporates? What was your takeaway from that? I thought it was quite a nice discussion, because it just focused on the things that you may not appreciate happen, which is that kind of feedback loop between regulators, policymakers, and the business community.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. It's probably actually all of those things now. It's you're creating an ecosystem that everybody is invested in or has to be invested in. Either you're pushed there by a regulatory point of view, you're taken there by your stakeholder shareholders, you're pushed there by social media and being accused of greenwashing or whatever it is. I think we're in an ecosystem where everything is driving each other, and it's probably that the next step, which is sort of the known unknowns of where are we going on regulation. Will we get Article 6 ratified next week at COP? All that type of stuff, and balanced out the other way, a realization you can make money. I think Mark was talking in an earlier session with Allard about his fund and Allard's company Infrastructure Asia, where they have for years been pushing forward the sustainable agenda and investing in things that don't necessarily work economically to get them going. And I think we're actually getting to a tipping point where a lot of those things, there is an economic opportunity to make money, and business is going there, and they're bankable. And I think that revolution is what we're in the middle of at the moment.
Well, I think it's interesting, isn't it, from an ASEAN perspective? I mean, some of that regulatory framework, some of those commercial models, are not yet quite in place in this region. So I think there is a bit of, learning and information sharing that can be done, between the various geographies and, some of the people that we had on our panel today, for example. Moving on, I mean, thinking about the UK's involvement, it was difficult to sort of get away from the absolutely massive moment, if you like, in history of COP26. I felt that the panel were looking for a number of things from COP26. It was looking for some kind of stability as to where we're heading. It was looking for sort of commitments and practical actions to enable people's businesses to build from. And it was also looking at a kind of almost a settling of the risk matrix or the risk sort of landscape that we find ourselves in. It's like things are quite uncertain at the moment in terms of where the direction this energy transition will take. And I felt that the panel, being a sort of prudent financing panel, they were kind of almost as focused on the what could be offered from COP in terms of stabilizing the ship. I mean, did you get that impression?
Absolutely, and I've been on the panel. I've been talking about it with clients. I've done my own webinars internally to clients exactly about that thing. COP is a watershed moment where, it's an opportunity. It's not necessarily the moment where people are looking for that certainty. I mean, there's when you look at a transaction, whether you're looking at it as an investor or as a financer, what do you want? You want rule of law, and you want business certainty. Sitting in Singapore, where we've clearly got rule of law, we've got a lot of certainty as to the economic frameworks we can put onto transactions wherever it is in ASEAN. What we've not quite got is that certainty in terms of will we have a carbon price? What other certainties can COP deliver to us? So I agree. We're at a moment where the politicians can deliver that. And I think if they can, we move into an acceleration of I think what the economists called the Roaring Twenties, and it is an opportunity.
Either way,
Thanks,
I think,
Nick.
to be honest, please go on, Ben. Either way, I think, to pick up your point, Nick, is that even regardless of what COP comes out with in the end, there will be an acceleration of investment in the whole climate transition, the energy transition around climate change. And, just as I mentioned earlier in another series, the fund I'm involved with, Climate Investor One, where we try to act as a catalyst to take away some of the, will de-risk some of these projects in the region. Just in the time I've been involved with in 3 or 4 years, the projects we would have invested in a few years ago now are becoming mainstream.
Absolutely.
So people are getting on board with the risk. They're seeing that the risk is much less than it used to be. But the opportunity, of course, is massive. And I think anybody who ignores that, including the banks, Ben, will obviously lose out.
But you don't get.
Well, I can assure you, I mean, this is the exact point I wanted to get across from this panel, and that is the banks and the investors are certainly not ignoring. In fact, there's been an amazing transition, already in the sector, and I know there's a lot more to do. There's massive requirements for funding in the next, between now and 2050, of course. But I feel like, we're listening to the market signals, and we're adapting and we're evolving.
Absolutely. I think that's well-made points, and it was a very interesting session, and possibly we'll wrap it up there. So thank you both for your participation and your time. And that's the final in our series of the BritCham event at SIEW. So thank you again all for your time and participation, and we'll leave it there.